Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very interesting stock report today. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. So another fun fact. Banger after banger after banger after banger. I'm telling you, I don't know what is in the air. I don't know what Gege is devouring. I don't know what they have done to decide that, oh, it looks like it's time. Time to cook. But Gege has been doing nothing but hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting with chapter after chapter after chapter. I keep wanting to say every single darn chapter, like, this may be my new favorite chapter this year. But I want to hold back a little bit, despite me being so excited, because chapter 20 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. It's some straight gas. It's some gas that's got me thinking, though. It's that reflective gas, that contemplative gas, that stroke the beard that now at least exists. Back when I was younger, I'd stroke a beard that wasn't even there. But stroke the beard that now exists and reflect on the character dynamics of the original series as I look towards the future kind of gas. It's that gas that you want to sit back and cherish. Take a deep breath in and inhale as you look at the stock report and realize how many mansions you're going to buy because you invested in Dora coin early. But with that being the case, Chapter 20 has a lot. So much a lot that the live reaction was 45 minutes. And you may be like, whoa, that's a lot of live reaction for Patreon members. You can go Patreon for those $1 a month, you can member for those $3 a month. Yeah, it was, but golly, I know my computer's gonna hate me because if the live reaction was 45 minutes, I don't even want to look at the timer of this video once it's time to edit it. But with it being the case, let's hop right into chapter 20 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo's cover page, because this is beautiful. I know Gege is doing the storyboarding for literally every single chapter, so that's why the bones, the base, the foundation of Modulo still feels and rings so familiar and so thick and so juicy, especially in these recent chapters, which have been mink, 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 weave, mink, mink. But in this in particular, I need to just consistently, and now y'all probably getting sick and tired, but I need to consistently glaze Yuji Iwasaka sensei for just being a monster when slapping some meat on those storyboarding bones. Look at this. And like, there's so many things in this. Obviously, let's go with the most obvious and clear cut. Now I think about it, this cover page is even crazier considering what ends up happening towards the end. That does actually make me truly wonder if like a reverse flip is going to happen, considering the nature of a certain someone who's released this chapter. But with it being the case, look at the two rings that define the history of the two Okotsu grandchildren who are now fighting for the future, as they are not old soldiers. As the chapter is titled, Old Soldiers Never Die, they are the new soldiers. Obviously, we have the ring that is containing the other, the larger ring, the older ring, the more ancient one, in a way, and that is the Okotsu ring. Now, I know the Maharaga's will has been around longer, but let me cook. At least in specific, I think the reason that Yuda's ring is consuming the ring of the Ten Shadows and is overlaying it while the Ten Shadows ring is trying to eke and peek out is very specifically because it is the foundation, the history. These two are Okotsu children at their core, and very specifically, the elder is trying to protect the younger. So, of course, the ring that it was given to Tsurugi, the elder sibling, is the one that is containing and hovering around the protective ring of the Ten Shadows ring, which is the adaptation wheel, Is it Dharma? I don't want to get that wrong. My brain is saying Dharma. Dharma wheel? Because I know that's the same thing. The Maharaga wheel is the same wheel that's in Ishiki from Boruto's. Yeah. The Dharma wheel, essentially or the Dharma chakra. Dharma wheel or the Dharma chakra is, similar in Buddhism. But, with it being the case, it makes sense why it's surrounding. And I do like how it does position itself as the slightly left tinted or down tinted one, because it is supporting the one who is fighting from a more separate place, a more opposite place. Obviously, Yuka is currently represented as fighting the main duel, so she's positioned above, while Tsurugi is fighting the background duel, in a way, fighting for a position below, and thusly they are flipped in position the way they are. So that's just beautiful visual storytelling, matching up with the narrative as is. Tsurugi is the older sibling fighting to protect his younger sibling from a greater purpose, using their family lineage, and very specifically the ring, as the foundation to protect Yuka one way or another. That's why the ring surrounds. That's why he's beneath. He's the foundation attempting to support Yuka as the older sibling. That's beautiful work. Then, of course, the Mahoraga wheel being tilted, being half down, half up, because it's meant to represent Yuka, and very specifically her position as being down deep in the shadows, yet up, technically fighting for humanity through Mahoraga. So it's a nice way to juxtapose that, tilted up and down, kind of like how the ring is tilted up and down, not only just to show, left to right reading in terms of like angle being downward and the symbolism in that, and the right side being up, but also to show that Tsurugi is down with the sickness in terms of like fighting not just on the down front, but also going with the idea that the ring is meant to symbolize like Yuka half being in the darkness, half fighting for the light of humanity. It's also meant to signify Tsurugi being a heavily restriction user, yet fighting with cursed energy at the moment. And I do mean at the moment, as the ring is tilted sideways too. They aren't just like perfectly circling around each other like they could, they are very specifically juxtaposed. I think it's also meant to show how they're equals, right? Even though the Okotsu ring is surrounding the Mahoraga Dharma wheel, the Dharma chakra, it doesn't entirely consume it. They are tilted, they are interlinked with each other because they are both fighting for the sake of the same future. That's really, really cool. And then, of course, there is just the coloring on this. I love how Yuka is illuminated in a much more bright, yellowish light. Meanwhile, Tsurugi is illuminated in a much more deeper, like, orange reddish color here. I'm not sure exactly though. Honestly, if anything, I'd flip these two colors. Mainly because like Yuka is the one facing the sunset of her life, but here with the way it's lit, it's like she's facing like a new dawn, which you could definitely argue she may, considering what may need to be done to save her life eventually. Meanwhile, Tsurugi is experiencing like a sunset here, at least by the coloration. But of course, there is later symbolism, or at least a later happening in the chapter that could justify him being in this orangish light. It may or may not have something to do with a certain thing that gets taken away from him. Almost as if this would be his last time ever fighting with cursed energy. Meanwhile, Yuka may be evolving into a new form of cursed energy. I don't know. It definitely is a weird thing. Yuka's colors, at least. But I do now sort of understand the sunset colors around Tsurika. That makes more sense to me in retrospect now that I think about what happens later on in the chapter and what it'll do. So there's that beautiful color cover page. Let's hop right actually into the chapter itself. Except, psych, we're hopping right into the extras as we go into something that tickles your boy's toes. The search for Yuji Todori. In fact, I'm just going to read the whole thing base out. Jeez, I'm supposed to search for Yuji Todori, but we have 0 clues to go on. Hey, Mino! Listen, unlike you, I'm busy running things. Oh, wait, no, hold on, I completely skipped over a second line. Hey, Mino, let's meet up for a change. Listen, unlike you, I'm busy running things. You just want to bum money off me anyway. Wait. Did I read that wrong in the live reaction? Am I stupid? Am I oopid? I think I am legit oopid. No, I think I half read it right. I don't know, I have to double check. But, essentially, he's like, unlike you, I'm busy running things. And she says, or no, he says, you just want to bum money off me anyway. And the woman, who I don't even recognize, says, busted. Come on, at least buy me dinner. And Mino says, next time. Beep. And I don't know who this woman is. I don't know her connection to Mino. I don't know nothing. But there's nothing more hilarious than him wiping her off. Which, in my opinion, he made the right choice, right? Like, I mean, if you have money to burn it, I guess. Most people don't got money to burn, though. And obviously, Mino was in a very serious situation. So he called upon by a possible acquaintance, put it nicely. Maybe acquaintance with certain benefits, not put nicely. Then he's like, no, I can't do this right now. I can't succumb to the weakness of the flesh and my wallet. I need to focus on finding Yuji Todori. The fact that Yuji Todori is right there. Like, not even generally in the same casino or parlor or pachinko shop. No, very specifically right next to this nameless woman. And she goes, hey, Yuji, that machine's hot right now. And Yuji goes, no, I doubt it. Animation's green. Which tickles me on so many levels, right? One, it is a nice little insight into how Mino was. We did take a massive time skip before we actually ended up, well, not massive, but a relatively sizable time skip from, hey, everyone's friendly. Oh, no, Carl's got shot. All right, 2-month time skip. Now we're fighting. So we didn't actually get to see what everyone was up to, especially when Usami was recovering. We still had the other grade 1 social woman leading everything. So it is interesting to see Mino's role and what he was tasked with doing and how he could do it. And very specifically, how he fell short. So that's good to see for Mino as a character. It's good to develop the world. Like I said, it's crazy that this woman doesn't have a name and I don't recognize her at all. Maybe she did appear before and I just don't remember. But still, it is nice to see that some things are always true. There's certain friends that you don't give money to. And On top of that, it is very interesting, if not appropriate, for Yuji Todori to be gambling. And there are a couple reasons behind that. If you've ever been to any sort of place where you can gamble, whether that's a casino, like either on land or on a boat, or just in general, any sort of gambling that can be going on, could be a game of blackjack behind it. I was going to say a specific thing, but it could be a game of blackjack behind, I don't know, some convenience store, right? You're going to typically find older people there mainly because they have money and they ain't working. They ain't got nothing better to do, man. Why not? They double it, triple it, or lose it all. Of course, is that a good thing? No, I do not encourage gambling. I never would. And I believe that ultimately, little public pencil PSA and slash, I guess it's a conspiracy or like believe it. I think the massive push for gambling literally everywhere is insane. Every other ad, sometimes consecutively, are just gambling ads. Hey, here's insert gambling app here. Like your money, like I don't know. In these trying times, dog, I'm not doing it. I'm not. But very specifically, older people do tend to do it. And while Yuji does still look at most maybe like a mid 20 something, maybe early 30s if you're looking at him the right way, he is 84. If I'm not, is that right? Am I stupid? 84 or 82? 83, I think. 83. Because the Culling game was 68 years ago. I think Yuji was either 15. He was 15 at the time of it, or 16. Because I believe Megami turned 16 by the time of the actual Culling game itself. I'm not sure if Yuji was 16. But assuming Yuji was still 15 at the time, it's been 68 years. 68 plus 5 is 73, plus 10 for the 10 years. That is 83, if not 84, if Yuji was 16 at the time of the Culling games. So, Yuji's an old guy. 84 years old. So, naturally, after presumably decades of sorcery work, before eventually getting bored and leaving it behind, especially as one of the strongest characters around, he was probably getting a pretty penny, and now he doesn't really have any value for it. At least he feels like he doesn't, so of course he goes and gambles. Another thing, this does extrapolate on, like, a weirdly present part of Yuji's character in the original narrative. I initially thought, like, oh, this is just like, oh, he's an old man with money, so he's gonna go gambling. But also, there's the idea that Yuji has always had an interest in gambling. Very specifically, remember the initial crime that Higuruma gets him for all the way back in the Culling game, 68 years ago. Not before the whole Sukuna Shibuya incident crime that gets pulled up from Sukuna's tenure/track record. The very specific thing that gets pulled up is him entering a pachinko shop underage. So, Yuji now finally more than old enough and having the funds to just burn, yeah, he's gonna go gambling. So that is very funny on multiple levels. It's an interesting point of Yuji characterization, considering at this point, it's hard to tell if he actually knew what was going on and just didn't care, and or just didn't hear about it yet, because he'd been disconnected. However, of course, we also have this search for Yuji Todori 2, as Mino is speaking specifically with Kugasaki-sensei, or essentially Nobunaga Kugasaki, one of the only characters from the original series that we actually get to see that is still alive, with like an actual new design, and isn't just, 6 feet under. But we see that she says, oh, Toto might know something. And naturally, hearing that, I'm freaking a Yuji, my boy Toto's alive! But of course, do I think Toto's gonna show up? Doubtful. Like, I'm not gonna do this. Value my boy, but Toto, if Yuji is 84, I think Toto was a third year, so Toto may be 87. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely, and in fact, if there's any character who would maintain their jacked, buff beefiness over time, it would be Toto. And like, obviously he's a superhuman, so like maybe he is still like perfectly combat ready. It wouldn't be the first time there was like actual genuine old men in anime who are dumb, stupid, strong. Heck, many people before it was revealed that Yuji Todori was truly immortal, as many people theorized, myself included, expected Yuji Todori to be an older gentleman by the time he re-showed back up and not still a young prime version of himself. But Toto could genuinely be the actual old man, crazy top tier strong man that could show up, but I just highly doubt it, especially considering Yuji's position on the entire current state of the narrative and where I think he'd engage with it. But still, it is nice to know that Toto is alive and kicking, at least according to Nobara. And we see that Mino reveals that he is Toto, the former Grade 1 sorcerer? His whereabouts are also unknown. Could you connect us? That's also interesting. I do wonder why he went off the map. Like, Yuji will have a very specific reason of, like, that we'll get into later. Whether or not I agree with the reason, whether or not I don't, whether or not I feel back and forth as I do a backflip over it. We'll get into that. But, very specifically, it's interesting that Toto fell off the map. Yeah, I want to know what he did It's very strange. That's not the only strange thing. As Kugisaki says, me? No way. And then Mino's actually like, oh, okay, ma'am. Then who should I ask? And Nobara goes, Itadori. And naturally Mino's like, ma'am, I know you were responsible for helping defeat Sukuna, but that's just going in circles. And we get an interesting lore drop, apparently. Sure, but everyone else besides Itadori hates him. What did Toto do? Genuinely, okay, now there's two interesting layers to the statement. Number one, I just don't know what Toto did to be hated. I know he was a very well academically inclined individual. He was top of both schools, I do believe. And also, he smelled good, which apparently the women of Kyoto specifically didn't like. But like, those are the only two things they know him for in terms of like, okay, maybe he was hated for because of that. Like, that's still strange. But when Nobara says everybody, who's everybody? Like, we don't know the whereabouts of, let me think of other specific students. Like, we don't know the whereabouts of Momo, whether or not she's dead or alive. We don't know the whereabouts of Miwa, whether she's dead or alive. Kamo, we don't know if he's dead or alive. But, like, who's everybody? Who's there? Because we know Hana's dead. We know Gojo, we know Yuta and Maki are dead. I don't know. I do genuinely wonder who's the everyone that hates him and what did that have to do with him dropping off the map? I do genuinely wonder, what did Toto do to be hated? Is there something, like, there must be something in the original series that I'm just missing. Because I feel like that is such an odd detail for Gege to drop and then just never, because you know we're never coming back to it. Because you have the Series 6 short run, which I do believe is going to do at this rate. We're never going to get into that. He's alive. He's out there. He's probably still in his prime, jacked and juicy and everything. Who knows? Maybe he even got to marry Takada. If she ever gave him the time of day, which, who knows with him. But, still, very interesting that everyone hates him. And then no one knows where he is except Itadori. But speaking about the whole idea of no one knows where anybody is except Itadori, including no one knows where Itadori is except Itadori, I am now fully convinced that Nobara was lying. Well, I'll go into a bit more, but just put it into your head. Remember when they asked Nobara, hey, where's Yuji? And she was like, I don't know, he hasn't shown up in forever. Like, last time I saw him was at Hana's funeral, that's it. I genuinely think she was lying. Like, I don't think she was truth in there. And it's not really just this that outlines that for me, it's something later that I'll go into more there. So, as happening to the chapter itself, finally, we see that Mino's like, Millie Rock, Yuji Todori! Hey, I'd say, whoa, bro. Hop off tip, but hey. You know, saw how I freaked and geeked and how literally the entire fandom freaked and geeked last chapter. Yeah, of course we're all hyped to see Yuji again. And obviously Mino's hype is a little bit different, but Yuji's like, gosh darn it, man. I've been so subtle, I caught so many bodies without them ever seeing my face, bro. I got this hoodie up, I'm sweating in the summer. Well, to be fair, it's winter, but I'm sweating out here, bro. What do you mean they saw me, bro? I'm busted. Man, what is life like? But of course, we know that Yuji did not actually get everyone in that big old building with that super giga piercing. Like, honestly, I almost want to call it piercing blood supernova. That's basically what it was. It was like the piercing blood orb fired out, then split into a bunch of other arrows that were all fast enough to tear through the entire building. And it did tear through the entire building, and it did take a bunch of Rumelians and regular human sorcerers. But notably, it did not take out one particular Samorian. One of the few with actually having, or I feel like what? How many Samorians have names? How many Rebellions in general have names? I think it's like 6. But essentially, Osoki leaps out the window, axe in hand, very confused, but very ready to run smoke with whichever took out the entire building and his own allies and the humans. And he goes in for a lunge. However, multiple things here. One, shout out to Osoki's just raw physical stats. I know he is a warrior, aka a sorcerer, probably very powerful and reinforcing Gersenius and all that stuff. But for him to leap out the building and then perfectly time the overhead double swing slam, like, he was ready to eat that landing. Think about that. Say it wasn't Yuji Itagori. He would have presumably cleaved whoever he was going for in half, but also at the same time, he would have had to eat that impact. And technically, he still does, because Yuji does simply, hold on, let me hit it proper light. Yuji's like, oh, hey, big guy, and just catches, not even catches, holds the blade. If Cecilia holds it like this, he catches the axe head, or the, what do you call the head of it? Is it just an axe head? I don't think you call it like the face one. I guess, yeah, but he catches the axe head easily. Though admittedly, shout out to Osoki once again, because he does shatter the ground beneath Yuji to Dora with the force. Obviously, it was probably a mix of gravity, but still, the fact that he did actually manage to send tremors throughout Yuji's body, and tremors were enough to crack the ground beneath them. I mean, it's not the craziest DC feat out there, or AP feat, but still, a very impressive showing for Osoki. But, with it being the case, we see as it goes crash, whap, Yuji is absolutely fine. Notably, he doesn't even take both hands out of his pocket to deal with this. He's still very much casual, very much bing chillin', if you will. And we see that naturally, hold on, I need a minute. Hold on. I need more than a minute. I need to grab something. Hold on. I need more than a minute. I need to grab something. Yo. Y'all know what this is? Y'all know what this is? Y'all may not. Because it really ain't what it really is not what I even about to say it is. If I ever cosplay, fun fact, I do want to cosplay one day. I do want to go to a con. I'm lazy. And also, there are not many characters I could actually naturally cosplay without having to go out and spend a whole bunch of money. I want to cosplay an Organization 13 character, but not only that, their coat's super duper expensive and a good quality one is very hard to find, but also, very specifically, I don't have lightsabers, essentially the one equivalent, and I don't really want to get, and while I do have like a keyblade, I don't want to cosplay like bald Xehanort. Like I'd have to take the dome off, because I don't think young Xehanort ever wields no name. Essentially, I need a wig or something if I want to play any of the Xehanorts or anything like that. But I do have this shirt. I do have this build that I'm working on. I don't have an arm, but I do have, and I don't have Inverted Spear Heaven, but I do have this. If you'll note, it's not exactly, but it's very similar to the Split Soul Katana. If you were wondering if I were to ever go to a con and I was feeling very lit, if it was like a last minute thing, or it was going to be like kind of cold, but not too cold, yes, I would go as Toji Fushiguro. Like you can almost see it, can't you? I'd hit the pose and everything. I don't have a worm though, so it'd be Giga broke Toji. It'd be Toji just getting SSK. I don't, since I rarely ever stand up in videos, y'all know, but I even have like a pair of pants that basically match exactly what Toji and Gojo wear. So like I have the cosplay figured out everything. You'd be like, Pencil Man, hot time to go into a mini Toji Maki Glaze sesh. What on earth is it called? He has the mini dismantle thing. Let me stop beating around the way. Like, he has the mini dismantle thing. And you'd be like, Pencil Man, what's the mini dismantle thing? He has the mini dismantle thing that Sukuna did to clank with SSK. And swords in general, but mainly SSK. One of the main win cons that EOS Yuji, or not necessarily EOS, one of the main win cons that EOS Maki and Toji, obviously not EOS Toji, but like EOS Maki had over EOS Yuji, was that he probably couldn't block SSK because he only had cleave, he didn't have the many dismantles. But now Yuji, he's got the many dismantles. As we see Osoki note, huh? Who the heck is this guy? It's not even touching him. But he's still gripping it. He's still holding it. He's using the chainsaw dismantle strat. It made me run for Maki and Toji. Tsurugi, please save me. Now, you know the funny thing is, unironically, it's like a generational, it's like a generational curse or like passed on trait. Where before it was like, Maki, please let me some feats, as it was to like prime Toji from Maki. Like you typically, I know a lot of people say, oh, Toji experienced this Maki. Toji's experience is off screen. Maki's experience slaughtering an entire clan, taking down a special grade vengeful curse spirit, and also, you know, fighting Sukuna. It's like technically, if you're feat leeching, you actually want to feat leech from Maki for Toji, not vice versa, because what is Toji's best feats on panel? Oh no, beating a drained teenager, and then immediately losing to that same drained teenager after they awakened, and beating up another teenager. How scary, and like a maid. But in terms of Maki, she has way better feats. Now, unironically, with what happens at the end of this chapter, I need to search someone to dodge a light beam. I need to search someone to do some. I need some upskill, bro, because otherwise it's over. Otherwise it's over. Because we see that Yuji isn't just capable of doing the mini dismantle thing, right? Like that'd be one thing if he could just use curse technique freely. And it was that high level control. His shrine control's got that good. Nope, but let's just stop there. As we see Osoki's like, do my eyes deceive me? Do my senses deceive me? He's an earthling, right? But his aura is Kalyan. And that is a very interesting position. There are a couple reasons in this position. Number one, it does make sense. We know that Kalyans are essentially cursed spirits with a solid physical form and basis, right? That's the whole, not the whole point, but like that's the one unique thing of a Kalyan, right? It has the same immortality and longevity and raw power that a curse does, but it's actually based in a physical form. Yuji is that because remember he has the same biological constitution as his brothers, the DPWs, and the DPWs were a hybrid between human and curse. So essentially, yes, Yuji Dori feeling like a Kalyan does make sense. But it is very interesting that he remarks on his aura, not necessarily his curse energy prowess or anything like that. It is that. Now, yeah, next thing, this once again is something I've brought up before, and I do want to see before the end of the series, but I highly doubt we will. I want to know more about the Kalyan that names them and gives them their roles, whether or not they're warriors or not. I do want that in particular fleshed out, especially since we are bringing up the idea that Yuji is a Kalyan. It'd be interesting to see if that creature calls out to the Sumerians, or specifically the Remelians, being like, hey, chill out. Stop it. I know what y'all are doing. Like if it had a word in to say something, because we know it is sentient enough to, give out names and roles and purposes and stuff like that. But at the same time, I just don't know if we're ever going to see it. As cool as it would be to see Yuji and that thing talk, considering it's essentially been going what Yuji was going through for way longer, presumably, considering it dates back thousands of years. I think technically, like, either it's as old as Tengen or older than Tengen. I forget how old the ancient mother Kalyan, quote unquote, is supposed to be in order to, facilitate every other one of the Remelians. But with it being the case, we see that Yuji, as he gets Kalyan glaze, cracks his fingers. He's like, ugh, you look pretty tough. And, hold on, dog. Hold on, I'm about to go take a sippy whippy, bro. I need to take a sippy whippy, bro. In fact, I take a sippy whippy in you. I do have a sippy whippy right here. Hold on. This is water. Stay hydrated, folks. Stay hydrated, because Yuji can't just do the main dismantle thing. No, that'd be too little. Too little. As he tells Osoki, hey, you look pretty tough. And then he reels back. He cracks his left finger and then pulls back. And suddenly his fist flares? Lord. His fist flares with cursed energy. And Osoki, literally, hilariously, while presumably still in midair with his axe being grabbed, is yanked to the side to expose his chest a bit more. And we get a crazy statement from Mino. Even though Mino is obviously the strongest sorcerer out there, he is still clearly proficient in Jujutsu and cursed energy, as he says something a little bit crazy. His precision is insane. I didn't even sense his cursed energy till it appeared around his fist. And you may be like, okay, what's so crazy about that statement? He just couldn't feel the cursed energy in Yuji, even though he was actively using a cursed technique. Now, obviously, Mino may not know this, and he's not close enough to maybe tell that Yuji isn't actually touching the sword. Maybe think if Yuji have just caught it. But this is Yuji showing off his pure, absolute domination over the cursed energy system. Very specifically, as he does reel back, make the cursed energy only appear when he's about to swing. Remember, one of the big points of sorcery fundamentals is, hold on. Let me make a little space. But essentially, one of the most basic aspects of cursed energy fundamentals is the idea that, hey, the better you get to control your cursed energy, the harder and harder it'd be to read you. The reason Mocking told you're so dangerous in a fight is because you can't even begin to read their moves through cursed energy because they simply don't have it. What Yuji has essentially done is maximize that same advantage. Where before, you could maybe sense Yuji going, me. Like, you may be able to sense that combo because you're going to feel the cursed energy go to his right, to his left, to his right. But now, Yuji he can simply raise his hand, and you don't know until he goes to hit you because the cursed energy flows in there. Notably, Gojo and Sukuna have never shown this trait. This ability to have such fine-tuned control over your cursed energy that it only appears in the instant that you need it and will vanish the second afterwards. That's actually very crazy. And we see that Osoki looks down and is like, oh no, bro. I didn't want to give body by a Kalyan today, bro. I came to save you. Why are you deep frying me? And we see that Osoki does indeed get deep fried as Itadori looks at him and is like, hey, you look pretty tough, so I'm sure you'll be fine. And, I mean, depends on what you mean by fine, because boom! a Black Flash tap. I would barely call this a punch, bro. This was like this was, I don't know. Have y'all ever been backhanded before? I don't think I have, ever since I've been like youthful and rude to my elders, but like this is the Black Flash backhand. BF BH, bro. Like it is correct. He simply knocks Osoki away with a Black Flash. And notably, Osoki doesn't get sent flying once from the ground to a building. He ricocheted off every single one. He bounced off the ground, bounced off the building, bounced off another building, ended up in the ground, split a light bulb. Like, that man was sent flying by a clearly suppressed, holding back. I don't actually really want to hurt you, Yuji. It's looking real bad. It's looking real bad. It's not even Satoru Gojo himself could land Black Flash on command, and now Yuji Todori's like, oh, that thing? You mean this? And just casually. So, yeah, Yuji Todori, he's up there. However, I took a little break in between recording the review and the live reaction, or the live reaction and the review. I've seen people say that, oh, Yuji can't hit Black Flash on Will. Yuji can't hit Black Flash on Will. It's just really, really good luck. Oh, neither can Sukuna. I think both of these characters can hit Black Flash on Will for a variety of factors. For Yuji specifically, he was already chosen by the Black Sparks. He was the man with the most not most cursed energy, but he was the man with the most essential, like, hardline body built for sorcery, like in a way that Sukuna was not, right? Sukuna was accidentally a monster for sorcery. Yuji was intentionally built for sorcery. So it does make sense to me that he would develop the same kind of mutation where he can sort of, I guess, he can sort of choose the timing. I'd say both Sukuna and Yuji can do this, very particularly because of their mastery over cursed energy, for one. Their cursed energy control. We know that Sukuna has 6 eyes levels of cursed energy control and understanding without actually having the 6 eyes. Meanwhile, Yuji has that same physiology, at least as a basis for himself, and now it's together. So Yuji, with years upon years of experience, has unlocked the instantaneous Black Flash. I think even Sukuna in the original series could have done it just because of how instantly he hits Black Flash the very second he wants to. So overall, very, very good stuff. But with him hitting this Black Flash and him ricocheting Osoki over the place, this leads to one thing. I'll definitely go over the Sukuna landing Black Flash on his own thing whenever he wants to later in its own video. It's definitely a whole discussion that definitely has a lot of questions if it is true. But to see Yuji do it himself is very, very satisfying. Like I mentioned earlier, Yuji was initially chosen by the Sparks of Black, but now he chooses them himself, essentially. If he's landing Black Flashes fresh off of no real battle, or at least no real intense battle, he's just casually doing it. It's now just basically a part of his kit. Yeah, Yuji Todori is absolutely him. Best cursed energy control in the verse? Arguably, debatably, if Satoru Gojo himself couldn't do it, and he had the 6 eyes. But it knocks Osoki around a little bit, and then Osoki's like, oh, sweet mother of mercy, bro. Last time I picked a fight with a Kalia, and he smacked the soul out of me! And he's essentially entirely removed from this fight. Do I think we'll see Osoki again? Yeah, but not at all in this battle. It seems like he's not recovering in the slightest. All 3 eyes of his are closed. Though, admittedly, I do think it is a good thing that I'll get to it in a second, Osoki and a lot of his compatriots are all knocked out. This will be a secret tool that will help us, I'd say later, but really in a few pages. But we see Osoki is laid out in the rubble and gone, and naturally, Yuji's like, well, all the aliens here are taken care of. Hey, you over there! And he squeezes some blood in his left hand, and it bursts out, and a little piece of it, I almost said Nyx and Nico, thinking of Nico from Percy Jackson, but no, Nyx Mino on the face, and naturally, if you'll remember, all the DPWs, which Yuji now basically is after consuming his siblings, do have poisonous life juice, and this poisonous life juice immediately gets Mino going, and is immediately hurling and throwing up, as naturally his body is rejecting the foreign toxin, except this foreign toxin is reinforced by Jujutsu, and there's basically no one left alive outside of maybe Dabura himself, who has more powerful Jujutsu than Yuji Todori. And notably though, it is just one tiny cut. He incapacitates them, undeniably, but he's not necessarily violent about it. Heck, even with Osoki, he didn't, atomize him, as he very easily could have. Osoki's probably one dismantle. One cleave, away from not even being alive anymore, but Yuji does explicitly spare him, and he spares Mino too. Ultimately, he's in a very sparing mood. And he explains to Mino, who is that there's a bunch more sorcerers out cold over there, but don't sweat it. Before long, they'll feel like they just got a real bad case of the flu. Tell them they'll be fine if they rest up for a couple days. Oh, and tell the aliens too. And I like this. I really do like the idea that Yuji is fully impartial in the most true way one can be impartial. He's not necessarily impartial in the sense that he's going to stand by and let the aliens and Somorians go to combat. He doesn't find that viable or useful or reasonable, so he's not going to let it happen. But he is going to knock them out fairly, as when we see Mino go, dot, 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 exclamation point, Yuji Todori, what the heck are you doing? Yuji's naturally like, Gangaruni, well, wouldn't it look kind of bad if I just knocked out the aliens? And Mino's like, don't play dumb with me, that's not what I mean. Why the heck did you show up now? Because you weren't here to fight, Yuka had to. And this I do love, right? I've barely known Yuka for 20 chapters. Just barely known Yuka for 20 chapters, but I do care for her, and I do understand Mino's care for her in particular, and very specifically the struggle he's gone through to reach this point, right? And how sad he was to essentially consign Yuka to her death, right? We see this sorcerer lady here standing with the bodies of the many different sorcerers Yuji's already interacted with, showing that he has been active. He's basically been lingering around this area, taking care of presumably just sorcerers, and then whatever maybe rebellions he's found so far, very specifically just enough to remove them from the fight in order to maintain the safety and safeguard it. But he's not necessarily interfering with the fight. He doesn't want to fight himself. And Mino's very disappointed in him for that. Obviously, Yuka was a child, wasn't able to live her full life. And while she does have that lingering affliction in her head, she very specifically is one who enjoyed life and wanted to live it. So of course, Mino seeing this poor little girl having to throw her life away when Yuji Todori, the strongest there is right now that Earth had to offer, was right there and clearly was engaged enough to at least know this was happening, he could have fought. He could have ended this. He could have prevented this. So Mino is furious with him. However, we see something very interesting yet understandable from Yuji. Something we've heard before from him. Something that Iori was told. It doesn't matter. And naturally, Mino's a bit confused hearing that and is like, what doesn't? And Itadori asked a simple question. I mean, who cares about Yuji Todori anymore? Me! You! Yes, you! Everyone around us. That guy right behind you. No, not behind you there, to your left. But with me, we all care about Yuji Todori. But very specifically, we care about Yuji Todori because even in our universe, we're removed from him by about 8 years, considering, all of JJK takes place in 2018. But for Yuji, he's been alive in the sorcery world for 68 years. He is one of the titular old soldiers, if you will. In fact, he seems to be one of the few old soldiers still around to do any sort of combat. And thusly, he genuinely questions, who cares about me? Who cares about I? None of you are the people I knew, grew alongside, and fought with. And naturally, Mino's like, we clearly care. We were looking for you, man. As he goes, what are you talking about? Shout out to Mino for surviving. I know it was only one to get a tiny cut, but still, shout out to him surviving or not surviving, but specifically saying conjuring against blood manipulation so much to even engage in this conversation. But we see Yuji go, they say old soldiers never die. They just fade away. Don't worry. I'll take care of the cursed spirits that leak out of Tokyo. And if Kotu's grandkid loses, I'll clean up that mess too. But right now, all I can do is make sure nobody interferes with those two. Or those four, I guess. And naturally Mina goes, I won't forgive you! And I won't forget you either! Sorry, that backwards. But we see Yuji chuckle to himself and go, and it won't be so lonely. And I think that's the interesting core, right? Notably, look at Yuji's hand. Look at what's missing. I'd say from the middle of his ring finger up and his pinky finger. They're still gone. Remember, the pinky finger was torn off by Sukuna 68 years ago in order to transfer Sukuna to Megami in order to get Sukuna a body he could actually control. Ultimately, Yuji probably could have regenerated that finger. Unless there was a binding battle placed on his body by Sukuna that he could not override, he realistically should have been able to maybe just cut the tip of that finger off again and then fully heal it back. Same thing for the finger that was given to Yuta, the ring finger that Yuta had devoured in order to gain access to a very, well, I was going to say very limited, but we just don't see that much of it, but gain access to Shrine for the battle against Sukuna. Both of those fingers are chopped, gone in a way. And very specifically, they're faded away. They aren't entirely gone. They didn't die, but they faded. And Yuji Todori finds himself in the same position, right? Except, of course, he cannot fade. Yuji Tadori is an old soldier, right? While clearly some of his friends are still alive, Nobara is still alive, Todo is still alive, we don't know the status of Megami or any of the other students really from that point on. We do know that certain characters are alive and well. They aren't warriors anymore, right? They aren't soldiers. And as Yuji says, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. Nobara, as fantastic as she did look for a woman of her age, presumably also around 83 or 84, she's not fighting anymore. She's not a soldier anymore. She's fading, right? Just as Hana faded, Yuta faded, Maki faded. They all faded and ended up passing away. That's a fate for everybody Yuji Tadori knows. All of his fellow soldiers, all the people he fought alongside, all the people he staked his life with, all the people that helped define him as him are gone. Of course, there is this next generation. He could maybe bond with them, maybe train them, but ultimately they'll be gone before him too. Everybody will. The reason I think Yuji didn't decide to regrow his fingers, well after Yuta's death, very specifically, you could say this is a binding vow, but Yuta, after Yuta's death specifically, even though he could very easily do it by just cutting the tip off and then regrowing the whole thing, I think it's one of the few things that reminds him of who Yuji Itadori is. When he asks, who cares about Yuji Itadori anymore? It's not in the literal sense of, oh, no one cares about me, I'm so lonely. It's the sense of, no one cares about me beyond what I am now. Just a soldier. Just a weapon. He now is in the same exact position Gojo was just many years later. It's not like Mino was reaching out to him for friendship or anything like that. It's not even like Iori all those years ago, right before Yuko was born, was reaching out to Yuji for that either. He was reaching out because he was worried his generation was weak. And ultimately, Yuji, when he said it didn't matter there, I interpreted that, at least in that moment, as Yuji being like, it doesn't matter because I'm here. I'll take care of it. Sure, you guys are weak, but no, I got it. And I'll get it again, and I'll get it again, and I'll get it again. But now, as he says the same phrase that he said to Iori all those years ago, I think what he says is, it doesn't matter because you'll rise to the occasion anyway. Just like me and my people did. Yuji Tadori is eternal, right? Unless Dabura or Maharaga or Mahito or some external force comes in and sneaks Yuji, Yuji's not perishing. Boy hasn't aged in 68 years, he ain't gonna start aging tomorrow, right? He's not a Saiyan, he's not gonna hit his rapid aging, and if he were a Saiyan, he would have hit his rapid aging already at 80, but he's not. So ultimately, he's in a position, an honest and true position, to kind of just look down upon the world. And not even in the same way that Gojo looked down upon the world as, being entirely untouchable, or even that Suga looked down upon the world, seeing the entire world as feasts and meals, as things to be devoured. He's looking down upon the world as someone who has simultaneously transcended it, yet is still trapped by it. Yuji Tadori is the strongest earthling there is. There's no doubt about that. Black Flash on will, the miniature chain dismantles, presumably a fully refined domain. He is the strongest there is. Yet at the same time, he doesn't let that define him. In the same way that Satoru Gojo was not the strongest because he was Satoru Gojo. Or no, in the same way that the strongest, how does that phrase go? The same way that Satoru Gojo wasn't the strongest, was the strongest because he was Satoru Gojo. Not necessarily just because he wasn't Satoru Gojo because he was the strongest. Yuji Tadori is the strongest, not just because he's Yuji Tadori, but because Yuji Tadori is the one character who could live, who could train, who could evolve, who could keep moving forward, without ever having to lose what he had gained. And I think it's very interesting for him to be put in this position where he's looking at the world as it is now, heard about the weakness of the next generation, and was like, doesn't matter. Not even in the sense that he would take care of it. Clearly, we see he was not willing to fight for humanity against Dabura and the aliens. And in fact, the one thing I did want to mention, I knew I was forgetting something. The one thing I did want to mention here is, I think I mentioned this all the way back at the beginning of the review, so you may have forgotten. But remember Nobara? I said Nobara lied about not knowing where Yuji is. This is why I think that. Because, unless they really did go full wide-scale coverage and told literally everybody aliens existed and they were going to fight for the planet, which maybe they did, but I don't know how Yuji Tadori would know about the aliens unless Nobara told him. I believe Nobara lied to keep Yuji's location safe because she's friends with him. And if Yuji told her, hey, I don't want to be contacted by Jujutsu higher than the Jujutsu world, I believe Nobara would honor his wishes and allow him to do as he pleases. And speaking of doing as he pleases, that is the other limited but still very applicable freedom that comes with Yuji Tadori's new station as the strongest that Earth has to offer, right? Where, sure, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. But in this case, as an old soldier who shall never fade, Yuji Tadori is fully capable of choosing his own battles, exercising his own will, being his own person. And we see that clearly here. He chose to intervene when he felt like intervening. He stopped both sides because he felt like stopping both sides. There's no one who could stop Yuji, unless maybe Dora lights me kicks him in the head right now, but there's no one who could stop Yuji or prevent Yuji from doing anything. Like Yuji could just decide one day, especially based on what we see later on in the chapter, Yuji could just be chilling one day and be like, in fact, hold on. I will put an exact replica of what could happen one day if Yuji felt like it and just decided to tweak out. Let's say he's at the machines, the Machinko machine, and he's just miss. I'm sick and tired of this missing. Ryoki Tenka, and he just expands his domain and destroys everything around him. Or he uses a singular dismantle. Note how I say singular. He uses a singular dismantle. Yuji Todori could do whatever he wants because he is the strongest there is. And in this case, Yuji Todori has taken the freedom and the liberties and the control that come with that to simply enforce this will of balance, this will of equality, and specifically to act as a safeguard for the battles that are deciding the future. Because ultimately, Yuji Todori is much like Satoru Gojo. For both better and for worse in some ways. Because Satoru Gojo hardly matters now. Ultimately, he wanted everyone to grow and surpass him someday. Did any of them? But that's what Gojo wanted. He wanted the future to take care of themselves. And I think that's why Yuji says it doesn't matter. He said it to Iori then, and he's saying it to Mino now. It doesn't matter. Because ultimately, it is the future's job to take care of the future. The past cannot dictate everything. In fact, I think where I would have immediately, if I had recorded the review immediately after the live reaction, I would have ultimately been like, I don't really think this fits within the original thematics of JJK or Yuji's role or his development. I think that's kind of why. But thinking about it more has led me to the conclusion that I actually really like this conclusion for Itadori. Mainly because it leads to a very specific idea. The idea of Yuji Itadori essentially taking what Gojo told him, the importance and the ideas of the future, and believing in it. Because JJK's original story is a lot about the past and how it shackles the present and thus limits the future. We saw this with the nature of the higher-ups, we saw this with the nature of the Zenin clan, we saw this with the nature of Sukuna and Kenjaku, and them literally writing the entire narrative. It truly was the past dictating and guiding the future. The future was barely at all given a chance to be its own future until Gojo himself facilitated that being the case. So of course, Yuji Itadori does not want to be his mother. He doesn't want to be his uncle. He doesn't want to be anyone that came before. He doesn't even really want to be Satoru Gojo, right? And this is the main thing where he differs from Gojo. Where Gojo cared about the future in the way of he wanted to be directly there to raise it and get them up higher than him as a collective so they could go beyond and make the world a better place. Yuji doesn't even want to do that. He very specifically does not want to interfere with the battle between Dabura and Maharaga and between Maru and Tsurugi. He very specifically does not want to take over the burdens of the society and do the great purification ritual for them, when he very easily could. He doesn't want to fight Dabura, the current issue, because he doesn't want to, because he has the power and freedom to decide what he wants to do, he won't. He is free. He is giving the future a chance to decide itself, since he himself is nothing but an old soldier. Sure, he's an old soldier that can't fade. He's an old soldier that can still fight. He's an old soldier that's still going to do his best to facilitate where he can, when he feels like he should. But in terms of the future, taking care of the future, that's the future's problem. That's what Yuji Todori means. That's why I said who cares about Yuji Todori anymore. He's a relic of the past that cannot fade, but ultimately, he's a relic that can choose how he's going to be used. And seeing Yuji reach this point, well, it's still clearly sad for him, right? Obviously, he's not smiling here. And in fact, he doesn't smile in this entire chapter. I think this is the most logical path for Yuji to have taken after original JJK, while keeping certain ideas and messages in mind. As very specifically, he talks about the loneliness, the isolation that came with his supremacy and his immortality, when Mino says he won't be forgiven or forgotten. And he specifically says, this is for the best, isn't it, Sensei? So, obviously, Yuji, despite being older than both his uncle and Gojo combined, remember, well, to be fair, we don't know how old Sukuna was before he ended up getting turned into fingers, but I don't think he lived to old age, just knowing Sukuna. He probably took that deal with Kenjaku relatively early. But still, we know Gojo didn't make it to 30. And Sukuna, look, I don't know, hey, in her life expectancy, I highly doubt that man made it to like 100 or anything. But Yuji, who's lived longer than both his uncle and his sensei, has sort of taken a fusion of their stances. How appropriate, right? Where he is, in a way, guiding the future, facilitating the future in the way that Gojo did, but not directly. And he is taking free reign and position of his power to do as he pleases when he pleases. If he wants to spend the day gambling while they're scrambling to find him, he'll do it. If he wants to prevent the humans and the rebellions from interfering with the battle between Mahoraga and Dabura and Maru and Tsurugi, then he will. If he doesn't want to fight, he won't. He has the freedom, he has the ability to decide. He is the one who knocks, and he is the one who chooses what he will do. So when he asks, this is for the best, isn't it, Sensei? It isn't just Yuji living in the ideas of Gojo and still not necessarily having changed all too much. It's Yuji essentially raising his current existence to Gojo's standard, and very specifically asking if this is what Gojo wanted. Will he get an answer? No. But this is Yuji's interpretation, this is how he shall live, this is what he shall do. And I think it's interesting to see Yuji put in that position. Now, of course, this is a very good thing for Yuji's character. I think it's a very interesting way to take the character after giving him immortality and letting multiple of his friends age and die around him, and him being the only one capable to do anything now, but choosing not to do it. That is a very interesting direction to take Yuji's character. I like it. You know I'm going to make another My Thoughts video on Yuji as soon as I get the chance to. But, very specifically, it does spell bad omens for one character in particular, that character being Yuka Okkotsu. I, like many others, was waiting for a Yuji third party. Not necessarily just a Yuji third party hypothetically on, Tsurugi and Maru to get them to stop fighting, but also a third party in order to save Yuka's life. Remember, right now, Yuka is in a suspended state of death. The second Mahoraga is destroyed, or the second Dabura somehow dies, which in this case, is basically impossible. I don't think Maharaga's got that in his bag right now. But essentially, when that condition is met, when that point is reached, for all intents and purposes, Yuka's going to die, right? Obviously, she was already in very bad shape beforehand, but hypothetically, a lot of people, myself included, were hoping that, well, the RCT of this era isn't as good, but maybe as one last gift to his grandkid, or to his senpai's grandkid, or as he calls him, Okkotsu's grandkid, he would take care of Yuka, right? Maybe have developed external RCT, heal her from her state of death, and very specifically heal her brain tumor so she can actually live out the rest of her days. And, be there, a part of the future, to guide said future, right? And essentially, I mentioned it, I believe, in his video, in the Mahoraga My Thoughts video, and I think in previous reviews, the idea that Yuji would actually end up playing a very similar role to Sukuna in Shibuya, specifically in the Haruta versus Mahoraga incident, or the Megumi versus Haruta incident, which led to Mahoraga summoning. It would show up, he would void the ritual entirely by taking care of Mahoraga, and instead of Dabura taking care of Mahoraga, and then even possibly before and or after that, he would quickly rush to Yuka, restore her to life, and then keep it pushing. Be like, alright, Gujiikin, deuces. However, he very specifically is not going to interfere. At all. He doesn't want anyone else to interfere either. Does that lock him off from changing his mind to going to help Yuka? No, it doesn't. At least right now, he's not set up to. And another interesting thing about Yuji's relation to the current battle, not just being a facilitator of it by not letting anyone interfere, but also, it is very interesting that he says, not just that he'll take care of the cursed spirits that leak out of Tokyo, right? Once again, facilitating the battle, making sure that Dabura and Yuka have nothing to worry about then, and no other innocents get hurt, showing that he still definitely does have a care for human life, if not as direct as it once was. If Okkotsu's grandkid loses, I'll clean up that mess too. Now, of course, this could be a two-way thing. He could very specifically be talking about Tsurugi. But obviously, I think the main implication here, considering I don't think Mino even knows that Tsurugi and Maru are fighting, is that he would take care of Dabura. Now, I've already seen it. I took a little peek around. I've seen some people say, oh, Yuji, he must have FTL or lightspeed reaction or something because he's seen Dabura fight and he doesn't seem scared at all. I would say that kind of, sort of, but it's very hard to tell how close they actually are to the battle and how much they're actually able to process. Yuji, especially considering he's been running around knocking out sorcerers all day, or at least all fight. I don't know if he knows anything about Dabura's current abilities and their ever-evolving nature. So, while I've seen a lot of people say, lightspeed Yuji, relativistic Yuji, I'll wait a little bit on that, because he may just not have full context for Dabura right now. And heck, Dabura doesn't have context for full Dabura right now. So, I'm gonna put a little pin, and Yuji just, ooh, my belly, and Yuji just hard wiping Dabura at any moment because he feels like it. He says, I'll clean up that mess, but it may still be an extreme. I've seen a lot of people take the take the Black Flash, the dismantles, and a certain dismantle that's going to come out later as free reign and evidence that Yuji absolutely slams Dabura, I wouldn't be so sure. But speaking of why I'm not so sure, let's actually get into the second half of the chapter, or at least the second, realistically, third of the chapter, as we see Dabura styling in midair all over Mahoraga. And Mahoraga, while looking jack, juicy, and lean as ever, is like, bro, what's happening? Bro, what's happening? Bro, what's happening? And we see that Dabura's like, yeah, what is happening? What is happening? Yo, what actually is going on, bro? Actually, am I cooking right now? As he says, so when you multiply cursed energy, which is originally negative, so when you multiply cursed energy, which is originally negative energy, with itself, you end up with positive energy, resulting in heightened explosive healing power. In that case, what would happen if I channel this energy into a cursed technique instead of cursed energy? He literally makes darkness. I was talking earlier about the stock market, right? And you may be wondering, hey, you're talking about the stock market, the intro, which is forever ago now, but you haven't necessarily mentioned Yuji stock, because we still have to get into that. I'm telling you, Yuji, if you early invested in Modulo Yuji, you did good. But, specifically for Dabura, if you invested in Dabura coin, in Dabura stock, in Kanaba stock, when I tell you you are eating good, I'm going to make a statement. I know some people are going to be a little bit bamboozled. Some people are going to say it's crazy. Some people are going to say I'm wrong. I think Dabura is by far the biggest prodigy we've seen on panel. Even more than Sukuna, even more than Gojo. In fact, I'd say way more than Gojo, honestly. Way more than Yuji as well. Even more than Yuta Kotsu. And a very interesting thing about this is that maybe the fight doesn't need a third party because of Dabura evolving so quickly. Because I wonder if Dabura could save Yuka himself as well. Considering he just spontaneously unlocked RCT, completely understands it to the point where he immediately creates a curse technique reversal. That reversal of light being darkness itself, and even Mahoraga being like, what? Why do you make you do that? What do you make you do? And I don't blame Mahoraga. That man was looking good for all of 2 seconds before Dabura locked in, and now, oh, Mahoraga, it's not looking good for you. But, with it being the case, I think Dabura may, quote unquote, like if there are 2 third parties that could happen, or there's technically another third party that's lingering. It was set up forever ago, but really depending on how many chapters should be left in the narrative, considering I believe volume 2 is well wrapped up by this point. It should be on volume 3. I think this series was meant to be 3 or 4 volumes. We clearly are approaching the end very quickly, so hypothetical, I'm just gonna say it, Mahito return feels less and less likely the more and more we go. Like, unless the man pops up next chapter, I really don't know what's gonna happen. But with it being the case, all that aside, Dabura's evolution and connection to humanity through sorcery and combat through Mahoraga and through Yuka may lead Dabura to defeat Mahoraga, but then not let Yuka die. Essentially break the foundation of the duel and heal her using external RCT he spontaneously developed. We know that spontaneously developing external RCT isn't impossible for prodigies like Dabura, because remember, Yuta, I don't even think was taught about RCT, but in JJK0, he whipped it out perfectly fine to heal Inumaki and Maki. He did that no problem. So I wouldn't be shocked if Dabura, with his rapid rate of evolution, learned external RCT, because he immediately figured out curse technique reversals. And the reason I say he's probably the biggest project we've ever seen is while Sukuna does have insane feats such as copying literal world slashing, like cutting at space itself, he did need a whole blueprint to do that. And Gojo, and the only thing we are pretty confident that he invented entirely by himself was open barrier domains, which is still genuinely insane. It is a divine feat, but Dabura is essentially literally reverse engineering, reverse curse technique, and then curse technique reversals on the fly, barely knowing anything about them in the first real fight of his life. That's something genuinely insane. It really is putting him up there in terms of, oh wow, this guy's actually monstrous. I'd give credit to Team Gojo for also learning RCT and curse technique reversal and then a hollow technique, or like a combination technique, if he didn't literally have a manual guide and wasn't trying for red the entire time before that. But we see Dabura whip out darkness itself. And this is a very interesting ability for him to wield. And I am very interested to see how this ability interacts with Mahoraga specifically. Because remember, at the end of the day, despite Mahoraga being a gigantic alabaster embodiment of humanity, he still is a shadow. He still is darkness for all intents and purposes, right? Like, I'm not tweaking, right? So, like, how is darkness going to affect, like, the Dark General? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how this ends up working out. And it is interesting also to see Dabura very quickly give up on the light kick thing. Because, like, okay, that's not going to work anymore. But he is moving much more logically. Oh, and this is very late into the review. I do want to clarify. I thought I had clarified it in that review. But I think a lot of people heard me say, Dabura's kind of stupid for kicking Mahoraga at first and then failed to. I should have responded to those comments more directly. I'm gonna start. But I was peering through the comments, and I saw a lot of people be like, "That wasn't stupid. He just made a mistake because he was testing out something new for the first time." I know, I know. I was calling Dabura stupid at first, but at the same time, I did go into the idea that it was very likely that he just didn't know what he was doing because he was doing that for the first time. So that is very, very true. Dabura's not an idiot. He was just not. No, he's not. He's new to this, not true to this. So there is that. But speaking of being new to this and not true to this, it is very interesting that Dabura sees this and not even fully understanding Mahoraga as a being of shadow like we do, immediately starts questioning, yes, hey, what do you call this curse technique on Earth? And it is also very interesting, right? We see the second that Dabura starts to do this, the rubble that was just like rising up from their absolute destruction of Tokyo begins to swirl around them. Meaning that this darkness that Dabura created may literally just be an intense concentration of a literal mass, right? Very akin to a black hole. Very akin to what Yuki Tsukumo could do. And that's very interesting to see him hold this power in his hands and very specifically begin to engage with Mahoraga as if it were an actual sentient breathing person with like thoughts and stuff like that. While I do believe that Mahoraga definitely has a personality and is like sentient in the loosest meaning of the word, it is very interesting to see Dabura acknowledge it and be like, hey, you're teaching me so much, man. Like what do you even call this? And obviously we knew it as curse technique reversal. However, in spite of that, in spite of Dabura's amazement with his own growth and development and his creation of things that he doesn't fully understand, but he knows Earth understands, he is very, very wise in the same way that I called him, in the exact opposite way which I called him foolish. As the narrator declares, with his new curse technique reversal, Dabura has once again seized the chance of victory against Mahoraga with his own hands. That's an interesting statement, with his own hands, almost as if a third party is on the table. I don't know. I really am interested to see if there is any third party in this fight, knowing that Yuji will not be the 1-2 third party in it. But we see that Mahoraga is now fully understood. He is fully read. It is interesting that there is some blood left on Dabura's face. I do wonder if this has been to show that he is still, in spite of his rapid evolution, his unlocking of RCT, he is straining himself still. Because like look at the blood, but that could also just be the remnants of the blood that already leaked out from him that he healed off now. But that being the case, he now, with new wisdom and understanding that even if he spontaneously evolves, if he's careless with that evolution, Mahoraga will adapt. He says, in his head at least, this time, I definitely have to defeat him in one hit before he can adapt. But then immediately his eyes widen and he's like, but how do I do it? And that's a very interesting thing, right? As crazy and as legendary and as next level as Dabura's evolution has been, it's like taking the evolution that Gojo, another strongest archetype, underwent in the Gojo vs. Sukuna battle and like ramping it up to 57. The guy's unlocking the rest of his kit, right? Like, this is crazy. All we need him to do is fuse light and dark. For any of my Kingdom Hearts fans out there who are hoping and coping and waiting for Kingdom... Yo, minor diversion. I won't go too deep into it. I almost want to put beans down on it, but I don't have beans, and I'm not a gambler. But if I had to put beans down on it, Kingdom Hearts 4 is not dropping until 2028. I'm putting that out there. And y'all may be like, and I know my fellow Kingdom Hearts fans are going to be like, what is wrong with you, Pencilman? Why would you curse it like that? Final Fantasy VII Remake already has a name and is mostly playable. Part 3. They are not, Square Enix is insane, but especially after the restructuring and all the delays and the canceling Missing Link and the lack of information we've had, there's no way they're releasing Part 3 and 4 in the same year. That's just not, it's not even a smart business decision, honestly. You release one major AAA title of your major series per year. Obviously, Reunion or whatever the third part of Final Fantasy VII, the remake trilogy, is going to drop next year. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. It's probably going to be like, I forget when Rebirth came out, but I'm pretty sure it was like mid or early. Was that? Man, I think Remake is actually 2024 now. Man, time's flying. But essentially, I'm more than convinced that Remake is 2027 and then 4 is 2028. Will that mean that there will be 9 years between Kingdom Hearts 3 and Kingdom Hearts 4? Absolutely. Is that excusable? No. But, sorry, all that aside, my Kingdom Hearts fans know that one concept that is shockingly unexplored in the series, I'd say, that we may see, I'm gonna get a Twilight attack in JJK, official JJK media, before I even get Kingdom Hearts 4, bro. What is the world like? What does the world come to? But that's what I think is going to happen. I think Dabura's going to realize that this fresh application of reverse curse technique, as he's theorized, or he doesn't know, but that's what he's using, he's realizing it's a little bit too small, and he doesn't know if it's going to work. So I think he's going to take what he has learned and what he already knows and smack them together. Because remember, the only two characters, and this is a very important thing that I hadn't realized until I thought about it, the only two characters that are known to have a curse technique reversal and a regular application technique are Gojo and Kenjaku of all characters. Think about it. Unless I'm mistaken, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, no other characters, despite numerous other characters having RCT and also a curse technique, no other characters actually use curse technique reversal other than Kenjaku with the anti-gravity engine from Kaori and Gojo with Red. That's it. Sukuna, despite being the strongest sorcerer, never uses the curse technique reversal. We never see Yuji use one. We never see Yuta use one. Plus there's RCT in a technique. We never see Hazanoki use one. We never seen, Akari literally can't use his curse technique when he has RCT because it's automatic RCT. But who else? Like, let's say that we've never seen it before outside of those two. And very specifically, we've never seen a curse technique reversal be merged with the base application of the technique outside of Gojo, specifically another the strongest archetype with red and blue to make purple. Now, obviously, Gojo created purple. Or no, Gojo didn't create purple. The original creator of purple was previous in the Gojo clan ancestry, and Gojo just had the starter guide on how to use it by mixing them. I think Dabura is going to spontaneously evolve his technique again. If the previous chapter was him learning, or if the previous chapter was him learning to use himself with light to pummel Mahoraga into the ground, realizing that failed. The next chapter was him learning RCT to recover from using light to fail to pummel Mahoraga, and then him using RCT to fuel his curse technique in order to create darkness, possibly a black hole. Then I think his ultimate evolution, the final step he shall reach, if not a domain expansion, which he could use, possibly by manifesting his innate domain. I don't know how you do that on the fly, but you never know with this man. Also, I could definitely see it being him taking the regular application, the reversed application, slamming them together, and just letting it explode. I'm thinking, what's a good example of what I'm thinking of? Like, in my own story that I'm writing, there is one of my characters has an ability to essentially spontaneously infuse their energy with splitting atoms, right? So they gather a whole bunch of mass at the tip of their finger, they make it really, really dense, and then in an instant, they split the atoms of that, and then they take their own energy and pour it in there to amplify the atomic explosions. That's kind of what I'm expecting, where instead of where Hollow Purple is either a clash and then a massive explosion, I think, or regular Hollow Purple is a clash and then a directed blast, I think Dabura is literally going to gather light in his right hand, gather darkness in his left, rush into Mahoraga, bring his hands together, and then let them out, and then just a massive AoE beam of Twilight is going to annihilate Mahoraga, if I had to hazard a guess. Because that's probably how he would figure to do it, because that would be big, bad, and devious enough. But, with it being the case, we immediately cut away from here. We do not get to see what he does, as we cut right over to Maru versus Tsurugi. And very specifically, Tsurugi I'm not saying he puts the brakes on Maru, but while he is clearly on the defensive, he ain't really struggling on too much. He's still kind of going crazy. As we see Maru go bang, bang, bang. He's not just attacking Tsurugi with his own physical form, as we see here. They're both using hand-to-hand and not their respective weapons. We also see multiple, seemingly tree stumps come to clash with Tsurugi. However, Tsurugi is able to bat away Maru, bat away the tree stumps, seemingly with one hand each. He knocks this one away, he knocks this one away, and he knocks this one away. He's perfectly fine. And then we see water burst up from beneath the tree, freeze Tsurugi, holding him still, putting him in a block position. And then we see Maru go to capitalize, only for Tsurugi with the opposite hand. Oh no, even with the same hand. I thought he did it with the opposite hand. No, just showing off his sheer lower levels of power. He simply punches through the ice that was meant to hold him back. And Maru is forced to block rather than go on the offensive. Though there is an important thing to note here. As Maru definitely is still on the back foot despite taking the offensive, Tsurugi clearly does have the stat advantage here thanks to Rika's infusion and the curse energy that is burning. Maru is very, very clearly relative. He's still able to perceive Tsurika. He's still able to combat him somewhat using his curse technique and his abilities. He's able to perceive him, showing that, at least for right now, the two are seemingly relative, especially in hand-to-hand with the utilization of their curse techniques, as it were. And we see, as Maru gets knocked back, Tsurugi begins to, and essentially implies and questions Rika, or really states it, Rika. And naturally, the Rika, speaking through the mask, is like,
man, sure, why not? Personally, I like a little nastiness.
Now this is interesting. I do wonder if Rika literally read his mind in considering what he wanted to do, but regardless, we see Tsurugi, not fully enough despite going the, gripping with his left hand as if he's, looking to do something. He does slam down with his right, clearly, and he reaches into the shadows and pulls out the split soul katana. Oh, sweet mother of mercy, pull that SSK. Now, we do know that the SSK is very particular, right? It is one of the most broken curse tools in the series, but only if one can use it properly. And the way you are able to use it properly is if you can perceive the souls of not just living beings, but inanimate beings. For example, I'm not entirely sure if Mahito would be able to wield SSK. I don't really think even... Well, Sukuna probably, just because he seems very similar to how restriction users. But, like, I don't even think Gojo could realistically wield SSK. I'm not sure those characters have the same soul perception that Maki and Toji do. And even in this chapter will show us, while this is a very powerful curse tool that Tsurugi now has access to, at least in this moment, he cannot properly wield it either, as he reaches into the shadows and pulls this out. Now, at first I was going to be like, Brody, that's not your CT. How on earth are you using the shadow storage thing? But I think this is meant to be a more like subdued or physical remnant of Rika's storage of cursed tools. If you remember when Rika was fully manifested, she was able to hold cursed tools that Yuta could then pull out. So I'm assuming, presumably after the death of Maki, Yuta, for safekeeping, essentially gave Rika all of Maki's cursed tools, including her most notable one, the split soul katana. Essentially gambling on in case anyone needed it in the future, they could use it. Naturally, of course, I doubt Yuta could fully understand it either, so he gave this, hoping, I guess, that another heavenly restriction user would be born. Otherwise, the sword would just be, a regular hard sword. But we see that naturally Maru was like, as both poor Dabura and Maru are fighting against all these earth techniques that they have no context and history for, while we as readers understand drastically. Dramatic irony of doom and despair, as Maru goes, did that come from the shadows? What can this guy not do? And he literally asks, what the heck is that katana? And naturally, Rika, not understanding the nature of the sword, but still wanting to support Tsurugi for Yuta, says,
just swing it as hard as you can. I'll give you the strength.
And naturally, Maru's like, what is he trying to do? And this will be very important for literally a couple pages, to give it a second. As we see that as Maru is focusing on Tsurugi and essentially preparing for whatever attack is going to come through, he immediately senses something in her. He's like, what the? As he notices countless cursed spirits beginning to rampage and scurry away from Tokyo. Obviously, Dabura has been going crazy. I'm actually genuinely shocked it took this long for them to decide, oh no, it's time to dip out. And they all have decided to dip out now. Notably, this was just supposed to be grade 2 and below curses, but some of these curses are like massive. At least seemingly, like, I mean, it may just be a perspective thing though, maybe these are all tiny, but curses of all varieties are literally flying and stampeding and just running away best they can, as they know they're gonna die. Fantastic curse designs too. But we see that Maru naturally realizes this, like, cursed spirits. And he immediately begs them, wait. Or no, he thinks they started a max exodus because they're afraid of Dabura. And that is a very good point. While Dabura is a Sumerian, he's not Rumelian, so he can't hear their voices. So even if he was to be putting them in danger and they were like, hey, wait. If they're pulling a Yuji in the latest episode of JJK that released, which is covering Hikari's introduction, just like Yuji trying to be like, let me tell you something. Dabura's like, man, I can't hear nothing. I'm having a great time. Let me just boom everything. So they're running away. And naturally, considering the battle that's going on right now, Maru's like, wait, no, stay away. And we see Yuji, seemingly having left Mino behind to, recover, walks on a random roof and goes, ugh, jeez. They did a pretty darn bad job of guiding them. Well, bet they underestimated the amount of curses that multiplied without the Great Purification. Guess I can't blame them since it's never happened before. So this is interesting. It goes to show that Yuji has been paying attention, as much as disconnected as he's chosen to be, as much as he's allowed the future to handle itself as Gojo would have wanted and now he wants. He very specifically is still keeping close enough eye to know that things like the Great Purification Ritual 1 were a thing, presumably something that he and his fellow students started, and also that it's been going well. They've been able to handle it years before, it's just that now that the rebellions are here, it caused some complications, and thusly the curses were allowed to rise. And presumably the curses also rise just because, thanks to the rebellions and their existence, more and more fear was brought up and more concern was arisen, creating more and more curses. But with that being the case, we get a panel that has caused a lot of hype and a lot of discourse, but I think I'm going to lean in a very particular direction. We see two things here. First things first, I want you to note right here, right now, Tsurika's position. Note Tsurika's position. And also note that they are currently upside down. I think I failed to mention real quick is that both Maru and Tsurugi or Surika, they are fighting upside down right now. If you'll see right here, these are the buildings. The trees and roots that Maru's grown out, like they are literally fighting upside down. Maru has flipped the world stage perspective, and he essentially gave himself his own battlefield that he can manipulate with chaos and harmony. So they are fighting upside down. So I want you to pay attention to that. I want you to pay attention to where Surika is standing, the pose that they take, and still do pay good attention to Rika's statement. Just swing it as hard as you can. I'll give you the strength. Note the wording there, strength. And remember how SSK works and why Surika likely wouldn't be able to use it right now. But with that being the case, and the reason why I say my blade looks very similar to SSK, even though I know it's not SSK, technically my blade has like the flowery design of SSK kind of sort of. It has these details on it, but not only is it just nowhere near as thick, SSK has a much thicker blade relative to its guard, which mine doesn't, but also mine clearly does not have the flowy, I'm not sure, tassels that come on SSK. It has this tiger head, which in my opinion I think is cooler. But still, if I ever did need like a fluffy mop, I guess I could just attach that to this sword if I was ever to do a Toji cosplay for a con. But with it being the case, I put it in wrong. I did not put it in wrong. It just didn't want to go all the way in that time. All right, hold on one sec. Yeah. But with it being the case, pay attention. I'm gonna make, and I do want to hear your opinions on this. If you have different opinions than what I'm going to say, but note where Surika is, note where Surika is standing, note the position of the curses, and note what happens here. We see Surika go in for a swing, right? Very specifically, a swing. Rika said she would provide Tsurugi the strength to complete said swing. I also want you to remember that for right now, Maru has been able to react to everything Surika does, and also has proven somewhat relative, right? Obviously, Tsurugi seems to have a slight stat advantage, but still, Maru's able to block and not take too much damage from any of Tsurugi's actions so far. So, with that being the case, Yuji, he hits it. My one complaint with Yuji at the end of EOS JJK, or end of CJJK, the boy has no range. He can't even perform range dismantles. He's not that guy, really. And then Yuji heard that, Gege heard that, and was like, oh, you want Yuji range? And then proceeds to show us Yuji throwing up two fingers, throwing up a dismantle, and boom! Cleaving through, well, dismantling, I know, not necessarily cleaving because it's right, but cleaving through every last curse, hitting the dismantle. And immediately, every curse across that entire line is detonated. Instantaneously. It is a massacre en masse. And very specifically, I want to note two things. Number one, I don't think either of these explosions are the dismantle themselves. I saw a lot of people go absolutely crazy. I finally managed to tap into the Twitter discourse in between recording the live reaction, and I saw a lot of people say, look at this, look at this, look at this scale. And the scale is massive. The explosions of dust here are gargantuan. These, I think, I saw calcs. Apparently these are like bigger than either Unlimited Hollow and or the Furnace results. Like these are crazy explosions. But I do want to note, this is the dismantle. Like this right here, you see this? Because these are the explosions of the curses. This is the dismantle that's going through them. This is the only solid piece. This is the one attack we see. I've seen a lot of people think that Surika is the one who caused the second explosion here, or Dabra, or anything like that. I don't think it was either that. I just see this massive line of curses coming here, and I think Yuji literally just sent out the longest range dismantle we've seen in the series as he, cut all the curses down. I don't think Dabra, we'll get into that in a second. I don't think Dabra exploded his ball yet. I don't think, because I've seen other people say, well, maybe this one explosion is all the curses exploding, and then this one explosion is Dabra's technique going off. But I just don't, I think both of these are curses. I don't know why there is a gap though. The one reason I don't blame people for assuming they're two separate ones, and why I don't blame if one of these does end up being Dabura or Surika, I'd be perfectly fine with it. The main reason I think this is all one thing is, one, we see the dismantle is traveling horizontally on top of the buildings. It's taking some of the building off, but it's also blowing through the curses. And remember, when curses are destroyed, they explode into puffs of smoke and dust. So obviously, this many curses, like look at, and very specifically, the reason why I think the explosions are spread so far apart. Look at I think this black here is meant to represent the curses. Look how there's a line of them low here, and then there's a spike here, and then there's a spike here with Maru in the middle. I think that's why there are two separate explosions. I think that's why the dismantle we see here is sent horizontally, and I think the reason these dust explosions are so big is because it's so many curses. I don't think Yuji just sent out a dismantle that had simultaneous furnace explosion properties. I don't think that's the case. But I do think Yuji has just shown us the longest and largest range dismantle we've seen in the series, and this was a singular dismantle. Sure, he did say dismantled and guide it technically with this angle, but still, that was crazy. A casual dismantle from Yuji able to do this much in one hit, and the explosions to be this massive, that shows how many curses he destroyed. That is a crazy feat. However, if you believe that one of these was Sarika, the reason I say it's not is because Sarika hasn't even swung. The reason, like, I'll give you one of these maybe being Dabura. Like, like maybe this one's Yuji, and this is him destroying all the curses here from the remnants of this panel, and this explosion is the curses here, and then maybe this one is Dabura. But I can't say it's Sarika, because no, Sarika never completes the swinging motion. Sarika's here, they pull out the sword, they go into a stance, they pull back the sword, they go like this, they pull back the sword, like they're about to swing it. We see once again, this is basically a continuation of that previous panel. They don't actually complete the swing. They're just back here. They're getting ready to swing it. They're holding it like this. And then, by the time we see Maru begin to overload from witnessing the death of that many curses, his brain literally starts to break and shut down. Saruki's still in the same stance. like he still hasn't swung yet. So I don't think Saruki could have caused either of those explosions. That's my thing. Saruki literally didn't swing. If he had swung, like, here's the thing. If Tsurugi was like this, like if he had completed the motion and was full like this, like he was all the way through the motion, or we saw like or even if here's the thing, I'd be even more generous. If we saw motion lines, like he had done this, he swung, but then he immediately like went back, and we saw motion lines showing that he was moving the sword back again, then I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe Tsurugi caused one of those explosions. Nope. I think this was just the after effects of the two spiked waves of curses flowing out that Yuji destroyed in an instant. And that those two explosions are that. Maybe one of them is Dabura, but I feel like we would see what Dabura actually did. Like maybe one of the black holes, maybe this dark orb did just cause a massive explosion, but I think this is just like curse explosion, massive dust cloud, because this is the most curse we've seen Slate once in the series. But regardless, even if it isn't the craziest Yuji upscale, I saw people trying to use this to be like Yuji one shots Gojo Sukuna now. One, it's not a world cutting slash as far as we can tell, because he didn't meet the conditions for it. I'm not sure if Yuji can meet the conditions for world cutting slash. I'm not sure if he's talented enough to copy world cutting slash. We don't know, but I don't think it's world cutting slash from how it's drawn and or displayed. And also, it still is a crazy feat. It is the largest dismantle I think we've seen outside of possibly the dismantle net that Kashimo got hit with. And it's also the longest traveling, right? Because even calculating this distance here, it is larger than Malevolent Shrine's range, I'm pretty sure, from the calcs I was taking. So if Yuji's slash traveled through all the way through here, and even worse, through here to cause the second explosion as well, like destroy even more curses, yeah, that's still the largest and longest traveling and longest lasting dismantle we've ever seen. Does that mean Sukuna couldn't do it? I don't know. We never actually see Sukuna at full power using a dismantle. And we're like, wait, we see him use it at the start of the fight with Gojo. He used it to cut down one building specifically. I don't think we never really got to see a full health, full output Sukuna without brain damage, use a full power dismantle. So maybe I'm just crazy. I think Sukuna could probably pull it off. But regardless, that aside, I may just be hoping for Sukuna right now. Maybe Yuji does just violently diff and one-shot him. Maru gets absolutely overwhelmed. It goes, there's too many of them. The burden's too great. And we see in this instant that Maru loses absolute control over his curse technique as his brain literally gets to fry. Remember, even witnessing the death of a single Kalyan is enough to possibly kill a Rumelian. So witnessing the death of hundreds, possibly thousands of pseudo-Kalyans so close, yeah, of course it destabilizes him, it causes him massive brain damage, and it causes his technique to crumble. And we see that everything starts to break down. Even this altered reality that they were fighting in seems to flip and go back to normal for a second there. But obviously, Tsurugi, seeing this opening here, takes it, and he lunges up the ground, bursting it open. But, as consistently shown, even in spite of the massive amp that Rika gave Tsurugi and the fact that she's putting her strength behind this swing, Maru, even while brain damaged and losing control of his technique, looks up and is able to react in time to at least grab a falling stone to somewhat buffer the effects of this whole split katana swing, or the split soul katana swing. And he does manage to block. He still does get cut here clearly. You can see that the slash goes across a bit of his torso and into his arm, so he still gets hit. And Surika even notes it's too shallow of a cut because he's not using the sword properly. Ultimately, right now, since Tsurugi is still incomplete as a Heavenly Restriction user, and also Rika cannot see souls, Thankfully, if Rika can see souls, that would also, that unironically, unlike Yuji, would go back to backwards haunt the Yuta matchup in a way I really don't like. At least Yuta versus Maki Toji. But very specifically, Rika can't see souls, Suriki can't see souls right now. Thusly, he cannot use SSK properly to its full potential. Thusly, Maru, who has shown relatively to Suriko so far, was able to react to somewhat and block it, even while heavily fatigued by witnessing the death of so many pseudo Kallions. And we see in this instant, Maru throws down the rock. He picks up the sword, and he demands that they finish this. Saruki, we gotta settle this right now. Bring it on! And we see that Sarugi. I saw a whole bunch of people disagree with me. A whole bunch of people were like, oh no, I'm so glad that Rika was the thing that came out. I'm glad that Sarugi didn't become like his grandma and his great uncle. Let's just read it all together. You and me. Thanks, Rika.
Good luck.
The mask falls. Ka-tunk. Huh? He released the transformation. The cursed energy is fading. What is this? Unlike before, Maru is unable to react as Saruki truly blitzes before him. Different. Better. Greater. The binding vow to release his power made him even faster? Sing! Splat. Maru's blood coats the sign that says no U-turn. No going back. Tsurugi Okotsu has finally been completed. The third case of a being with no cursed energy has been fully realized. The equivalent to the demonic fighters of Toji Zenin and Maki Zenin has been fully realized. And do you know what this means? Do you know what the... Fine, and I am going to use this, and I'm going to throw it, and I'm going to see it, and I'm going to lay it out to y'all here first, and I need y'all to tell me if y'all disagree. But I think y'all all know where I'm about to go with this. A big thing that I kept emphasizing with this fight is that Maru never actually did get blitzed. He was never fully unable to react. Even when heavily fatigued and using his curse technique to the max, and with brain damage, the second seeing so many Kallions get destroyed, or pseudo-Kallions get destroyed, he was still unable to be properly blitzed by Surika. He was still able to react under all these circumstances. He was still ready to keep on fighting. But it is only when Rika takes everything away, her own external cursed energy, and then the cursed energy that was stored within Tsurugi, she takes all that away. It is only then when Maru's unable to react. When Tsurugi truly blitzes him and cuts right through. He's able to properly use the split soul katana and completely overwhelm him. What does this mean? You're like, okay, Pencil Man, cool. So Maru was unable to react. What does this mean? It means that Tsurugi, who I think it's undebatable, if we go with the incomplete Tsurugi from the start of this narrative, and we go with a Yuta Okotsu with no cursed energy, Tsurugi's stronger, right? Absolutely. We're on the same page with that. We're all good. We're Gucci geeking. We're all Gucci geeking, right? Right. So now Tsurugi's completed. He's a completed heavily restriction user. Just like Maki, just like Toji. And now he actually is able to blitz Maru. Unlike before, where he had boundless cursed energy, so much cursed energy that Maru believed not a single being could contain it. It would take years upon years, decades of pouring cursed energy into that ring for that much cursed energy to be stored in an individual, aka Tsurugi, while he was Surika, was basically full power Yuta, because he had boundless cursed energy plus crazy base stats. Even still, Maru was able to keep up. But now that Tsurugi is completed, he can't. You know what that means? It means that Maki and Toji have better stats, physical stats than Yuta. I don't know why this is a debate to this day. Y'all need to hop off Yuta's meat. How about that? He has better stats than... He just has better stats. Maki and Toji have better stats than Yuta. I don't know why that's such a controversial take. But everybody, to this day, fights against me. They rebel against the machine whenever I say it. But if there's no clearer evidence than this. Tsurugi was essentially full power Yuta. It wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. It's only once he achieved complete heavenly restriction when he actually got the best physical stats and body in the verse. Shock horror! Full-grown, absolute peak human physical man Maki or physical man and woman Maki and Toji all have better base stats than sickly 16-year-old Yuta. He's not sickly anymore, but like not very physically strong Yuta. I don't know why that was a controversial take, but hopefully this reinforces it that it's facts that Maki and Toji have better stats than Yuta. Are we good? Are we good? If you disagree with me, explain how. Explain why you think Yuta has better speed and base physical strength and base durability than Yuta. Or no, why Yuta has better base physical strength, base physical speed, and base durability than Maki and Toji. Explain why you think that still, if you do. But if you're on my side, or if you switch to my side, welcome over. We're glad to have you here. We're all in this together. Okay, I'm not going to take too much time in that. But, if you couldn't tell, by how long I've been yapping here, of course, this is the W chapter. I mean, have you heard this guy glazing? Have you heard this guy doing nothing but glazing? It's been an hour and a half. I'll swing by the mirror. But like, have you heard me dog? Brody. Potato chip. You know what it'd be like. But yeah, the chapter straight, guys. The chapter straight. Like, I genuinely think it is truly a 10 out of 10. Like, there's not a single thing I would add or remove from this chapter. It's a chapter filled with a lot too, right? Like this hour and a half time, it isn't just coming from me, you know, this chapter has one thing. No, this chapter does have three. Technically, it has with the opening color cover page that had its own discussion. Then we had the little Search for Yuji Todori flashback, which I think did deserve its own discussion because it talked to us about Todo and showed us what Yuji was doing in his free time, which I think is important considering the whole nature of Yuji's freedom that came with his power. Then, very specifically, we had the introduction section with Yuji interacting with the Rumelians, very specifically establishing his nature as a Kallion, which I think is very important, and will show whether or not Yuji will choose to or can act as a facilitator between Samurian, specifically Rumelian, and humanity. That's a very interesting position to show. It shows us Yuji's evolution in terms of his control of his cursed technique and his control over cursed energy, which is also very important to show how he fits into the new strongest archetype of the modern day, despite being not from the modern day. I think it's also very important to establish Yuji's ideology and his equality in the idea of taking down both humans and Samurians that would interfere with the battle. I think it's a fantastic way to show how Yuji feels about the current situation, how he will interact with the current situation, and how ultimately there's nothing anyone can do about it. He is the strongest in the same way that Gojo was, in the same way that Sukuna was, so the rest of the Jujutsu world can kind of just suck it. They can't do anything to him because he's just that powerful. I think that's great to reinforce. I think that's great to show, and I think it's great to see how Yuji feels about that, and ultimately how he doesn't necessarily care for it, but he's going to use it as he can and as he sees fit. I think it's fantastic that Yuji sets up his position in the world as the strongest. A solid, beautiful mix between Gojo and Sukuna, doing whatever he wants, however he wants, whenever he wants, because he has the power, yet at the same time believing that the future should take care of the future. The next generation should handle itself. An old soldier like him should fade away even if he cannot physically fade, but while he has not physically faded, he shall play his role as a facilitator, as a guardian, as a safeguard to the battle between the heavens and the earth. I think that's beautiful. I think it's an interesting way to take Yuji's character, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here, considering he seems like he's not going to third party at all. Then, of course, we have the second section, which is admittedly the shortest section of the chapter. It is only, 2.5 pages, really, of Dabura's consistent evolution against Mahoraga, his own adaptation to the Beast of Adaptation, the idea of the transcendent heavens and the transcendent earth going to battle for the sake of overcoming each other and really reaching understanding, seeing Dabura evolve even further to discover Curse Technique Reversal, to see him actually inquire Mahoraga about Curse Technique Reversal, and then to go and reflect on his own limits and the dangers of allowing Mahoraga to adapt to even this. Beautiful to see. Dabura is growing wiser, he's growing smarter, he's growing stronger, and he's growing in a way that only Dabura can, proving himself as the greatest prodigy we've ever seen in all of JJK, with more power than we may have ever seen it. I'm still not sure about that, but a whole lot more power than the average individual in JJK by a long shot. Also perfectly fitting into his own strongest archetype, but very much in terms of like a baby strongest in comparison to a very much adult strongest in terms of Yuji. Then, of course, we have Tsurugi versus Maru. Technically, you may be like, oh, well, while Yuji's interactions have interesting themes, Dabura's interactions have interesting themes, Maharaga's playing into Dabura's themes is very interesting. Same with Mino's playing into Yuji's themes and all the grade 1 sorcerers and the Samurians. What interesting themes are here at play with Maru versus Tsurugi? There's nothing interesting here, but I think the themes here are interesting because it goes to show how ultimately Tsurugi trying to be something that he's not is not good enough. right? Him wielding the power of Rika, while it was nice, while it was juicy, while it was mean, while it was clean, it was not what he needed to do to overcome Maru, who had fully embraced his nature as a warrior. And whether or not that is a good thing is yet to be seen, but I think it's very important that the moment that Tsurugi transcends his nature as a hybrid warrior, quote unquote, or a hybrid sorcerer using cursed energy, even though he himself is a heavily restriction user, it failing, even when Rika puts all the strength behind it, putting power behind it, it failing and him only achieving the ability to bypass Maru by truly accepting his own true nature, very beautiful. I like it a whole lot, very good just for the narrative storytelling. And Rika even taking everything away, showing how the separation and the loss of something is still a good thing in terms of certain things, is very good to see thematically and narratively. That's a theme that's still going on. For Maru's side of the thematics, I think it is still very interesting to see him caught between his natures here. Obviously, he's fighting Tsurugi both as a friend and very specifically as a man fighting for all of his people to live a safe life. But in the end, it is his culture that shackles him, is his culture that binds him, and is his culture that explicitly weakens him here. When the witnessing and the, well, to be fair, it's not even just his culture, it's his biology that holds him here as he struggles with the death of so many pseudo-Kallions and is forced to face Tsurugi, who doesn't suffer at all because it's not anything to worry him. And of course, you know, Yuji showing off and acting as the barrier between the curses and humanity, once again, as he literally is the barrier between curses and humanity, using this mantle, the technique of the king that once, in many ways, ruined his life many a time over and gave him endless trauma. Very, very cool. Fantastic to see his evolution and him still playing a protective role and still clearly caring for people, even as he has changed his care for people, is very fantastic. And Maru versus Tsurugi leveling up once again is going to be very interesting. Do I think the battle's actually over here? I mean, maybe. We don't really have that much time left. But at the same time, I could see Maru finally gaining a liberation of his own. This is Tsurugi achieving his liberation of cursed energy, but I think Maru needs to liberate himself from the chaos and harmony of being a warrior, being a piece of his culture. I think Maru needs to evolve even further, and I think that's what we're going to see next from him. So overall, a W chapter in 50 million different ways. Let me hit it for the 2 time. But if you made it all the way to the end of this thicky boy of a video, please do me a favor and leave slashing through endless twilight. That's one of the edgiest passwords I've ever made, bro. I'm sorry, I can't get here, but the edge in me, it's ever strong. But leave slashing through endless twilight in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you're to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that link notifications bell so you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you can have a picture down below. You support me for as low as $1. Get one. I want to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the 45-minute. I've got to edit that right after this. A 45-minute live reaction to this very chapter and all previous live reactions to JJK Modulo and all future live reactions to JJK Modulo and other series I review. Link down or in the 4 pages of members down below. If you are and of course, if you're a Patreon member, you get your name listed at the end of every single video I produce. And if you're a $3 member or $3 Patreon or higher, you get your name listed and read aloud at the end of every single video I produce. There is also the fact that if you are a patron member, you get all early access to not just all videos here for the main channel, but all videos for the second channel. That got the reaction link in the description down below. Do 45-minute to 2-hour long reaction videos over there every Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. And on top of speaking of ESTs, I do my Twitch. That got the controller link down below. We stream every Friday at 8 p.m. EST. Roll through. If you ever want to yap with your boy, have a good time with your boy, we have a wonderful time over there playing Silk Song right now. May take a little break to do some Pokemon Showdown battles because I'm itching to play some Pokemon on stream because I talk about it so much. But there is that. And on top of that, I do my Ko-Fi link down below where you can drop 5 minutes or short video. No, that means a long video or any means at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Once again, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Redwolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2MA, Gyomi, Buddha Uda, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Dino, Hector Gonzalez, Tim Thomas, Kilving, Julian Perez, RXN, Nevis97, Logan Guzman, Dead Meme, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, Hamza Idrisi, BNA DNA, Edwin Idbignoba, Straw, Athenzi Shear, Antavius Mitchell, Sewer Flame Zero, Weary Exile, Window Life, Alex Kenny, Victor Jacobs, Todd, The Practical One, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Funny Dude, Jagoda, Plant Crone, Striker Man, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, Multi-Batman Superman, Ramondo Furen, Zalims, Enzo, Union I Metatron, Sheesh King, Joe Bean, Aswin, Hedy Prasetya, Sleepin' John, JMB, Katie, The Young Family, Pastel Pandora, and Sino King. Then, let even thank you to Artline Art Tier patrons, A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Karina Hernandez, and Lil Kodo. Then, let even thank you to our Inc. Tier members, King RTX and Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06, along with Zom. And then, let even thank you to our Digital Art Tier members, J Warrior, AZ Void, and Valden Nissen. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our Colored Art Tip patrons, Walkie Munoz, and Aonesto902 at gmail.com.